Hey guys, it's Tyler TCG Rewind, and today I wanted to do a breakdown of Tengumania 4, which was our largest Tengu plant tournament we have had in our Discord to date. We had around 50 some players come compete, which means we are growing, so that is fantastic. And guys, if you want to participate in these tournaments, make sure you join the link in the description to the Tengu plant Discord. Come in and play. This was a free entry tournament with a $400 cash prize pool, so definitely a worthwhile experience for those who get to participate and especially win those prizes. You win money, you win mats, there's all kinds of cool stuff, and it all is for free, so definitely would encourage you to check it out. And also, this tournament was completely live streamed on my YouTube channel. If you want to check that out, you know, we streamed day 1 where we played all the way up to top 4, and then in day 2 we had the Cali effect join us to cast day 2, which was really fun. So make sure you guys check out the streams. It'll be on my live feed on my YouTube channel, so if you guys are interested in seeing any of that gameplay, then definitely recommend checking it out. Other than that, let's go into the breakdown of the meta of what this tournament was having. We had an interesting turnout, and this is why this is interesting. So in a lot of our previous tournaments, we've seen a lot more like rogue strategies coming up, but then for Tengumania, we actually had a ton of players playing Tengu plants, agents, even TG and heroes. All saw a lot of representation. So we saw a lot of the traditional like retro meta being played, which I find very interesting, that like people are, because Tengumania is more serious, then people felt the need to, like, I guess, or it's playing for money, right? So people felt the need to kind of push in on decks like this instead of going for the other rogue strategies they've kind of been playing in our other like smaller tournaments. I find that interesting because I will say that the conversion rate for how many, we had 10 agents, 8 Tengu plants, 6 TG. The conversion rate for these into top cut was actually, pretty small. We really didn't see a lot of these decks make it. Like, they were not dominating top cut by any means. So it's kind of interesting to see that and see like where these decks are at. So we'll just go through the breakdown. I'll kind of talk more about this later. But yeah, so we have 10 agents, 8 Tengu plants, 6 TG, 6 heroes, 4 chaos, 1 piper, 1 angel, whatever that means, 3 GK, 2 Nordic, and then we had 12 others, and there was like one of like a bunch of one of. So 1 macro dino, 1 X-Saber, 1 Lancer Frog, 1 Gladiator Beast, 1 Flip Control, 1 Jurak, 1 Vayu Turbo, 1 Unicorn Control, 1 Six Samurai, 1 Worm, 1 Dragoonity, and 1 Infernity. So we saw a bunch of like one-ofs of like certain decks, but there were so many decks that I just felt were hard overlooked for this tournament. Like I said, we have, like, for example, Psychics. Y'all already know I'm a big preacher on Psychics. I think that deck is very good. Karakuri, we didn't see anyone playing Psychics or Karakuri, and we only saw 1 player playing X-Sabers. Those are 3 of my favorite decks in this format. I think they are actually very, very strong, and we just don't see representation for them, which I find very interesting and honestly a little disappointing. I'd like to see some guys, pop off with the decks. I can't be the one playing them because I gotta stream. So, I'm hoping you guys will come in and dig a little deeper, give some of those decks a try. I mean, I made clear-cut, in-depth guides on both Karakuri and Psychics, guys. Take advantage of those. Come on. But anyway, that being said, it still was a very diverse showing of different decks. It still was a very, very cool tournament to watch. It was so competitive, so intense. Like, this was a very long tournament with 50 people playing in it. So, yeah, we'll just jump right into the top cut so we can take a look. So, 7th and 8th place, one is not higher than the other here. We're just going to start with Bardock, who was playing GK. And this list is like kind of similar to Himne's a bit, where we have a Wonder Wand, but we're not like relying on that entirely. We're opting for more traps. I like the Triple D Prison. That's very good for things like the TG matchup. I feel like this is what swings that matchup really hard. Even into heroes, it's pretty good. I mean, minus Alias, but really good into the Shining, stuff like that. And then also the Double Assailant. I think this is like pretty smart, honestly. We kind of saw with Himne where if you run out of resources, like this card came up quite a bit in a lot of our matches where we saw GKs on stream, where it was like, hey, this is like the best card at the given time to deal with your opponent's board and play around cards like Horn of the Phantom Beast, stuff like that. So I really like this card. I don't disagree with it being a 2-of because of how relevant it feels like this card was. Descendant seems pretty standard as a 1-of. And then we've got things like a single copy of Rite of Spirit. I do think this card is really good. I'm not a fan of Allure. I don't really think this card accomplishes very much. Like, what do you want to banish I don't think you want to banish anything in this deck, if I'm being honest. Also, I'm a fan of Gale in Gravekeepers because I think making Arcanite is really good and halving something is really good. So that'd be my criticism. But another thing I really want to talk about is I think this was a very smart side. Lance is very relevant against the hero matchup, very relevant against things like TG. And then also, this was like another crazy heavy side for the hero matchup. We're running 3 Super Poly and even opting to run, you know, a bunch of targets for it so you can fuse with your hero opponent's boards. I think this was a very smart call. This is something I've talked about in my other videos that I think people should start doing. If you're not dependent on your extra deck, which for the most part, Gravekeepers aren't really synchroing much or anything like that, then I think this is a worthwhile investment. And maybe that's also why they opted to not run something like Gale. But overall, really, really cool build, really cool take. Like, sick to see this deck top. I think this is also a pretty smart meta call for the time. Like I said, Tengu Plant format is a very fluid format, so certain decks become better at certain times, you know, the longer it gets played. There's no one deck that is just like the best call at a given time, in my opinion. I always think there's certain decks that go up and down in value. So seeing this deck looks really, really good. Going on to 7th place, or, you know, continuing on 7th, 8th, or whatever, we have the Paprika. Yeah, the Paprika. So we have the Paprika with Tengu plants. This deck is pretty standard, in all honesty. There's not a ton to say about it. Like, for the most part, we're cutting a Call of the Haunted for Mirror Force and cutting Trap Dust Shoot for Thunder King. Like, those are the 2 things that are different from the Billy Break list. Other than that, it's like uber standard. I like the Puppet Plant on the side. This is a good meta call, again, because heroes are so popular right now that this deck does very well into them. And then, but yeah, for the most part, it's like super standard. Went a little light on the back row hate, which, like, if heroes are popular, the back row decks are popular, I think Decree is like pretty important as a card to run. But yeah, other than that, there's not really a ton to say. This is pretty standard Tengu Plant deck that, you know, made it into top 8. And then moving on to 5th and 6th, we actually have Leigh Murphy, who is playing Agents. And this is like very similar. It just reminds me so much of the Author Agent build, right? Where you're running upstarts. We decided to drop one upstart so we could run, I think, Jupiter. I don't know if that was like in there, but whatever, if you want to do that, you can. I personally am not a fan of low back row agent lists. I understand the consistency you add from upstart, but I just don't think drawing cards in this deck is very good, and there's a lot of times you have to hold upstart because you don't want to draw Shine Ball, but like, I feel like it almost defeats the purpose a bit because you really need Venus to resolve. The biggest difficulty with agents is it bricks, and honestly, I think it's like pretty normal summon reliant unless you have exactly Hyperion. So, like I said, not much to say. It's pretty standard. I like the Lance inside. I think 3 leeching feels a bit excessive, but maybe this is just, I really want to win that mirror match, and so this is how it's going to be done. But yeah, other than that, pretty basic list by Leigh Murphy. Congrats to making 5th, 6th in, again, one of our largest tournaments ever. Moving on, we have Blaze Phoenix, who is also playing their version of Tengu Plants, which is using Light Sworn, like a very small Light Sworn package with charge. I personally don't like milling a ton in this deck, but because of Tengu, you can mill Tengu, it feels bad. But if you've ever watched Blaze Phoenix play, this man only mills like the most Thanos cards, so I understand why they opt for it. And then we have in the side deck, I think 1 Decree is like really interesting. Like, how do you even side that in? That feels really awkward to me. I feel like if you're not maining Judgment, why side that card as well? Because, yeah, I really need Judgment here, you know? Like, you always need Judgment or you don't need Judgment, right? Like, that's just how it be. And then we have Trap Eater. I really want to know if this card tests well. I see a lot of people put it in, but I've never seen this card hit the field. I don't know if it's actually good or not, or if you're better off just running Decree or another, like, you know, maybe Dust Tornado or something like that. Sea Puppet Plant, again, very smart call right now because heroes are just so big. But other than that, pretty similar to what we've seen from Blaze Phoenix before. I like the Chaos Sorcerer with the Lightsworn package. I think this card goes really hard in Tengu plants because, again, if you have the one-off tuner. No Arcanite in the extra deck, which is kind of interesting. If you're going to run Chaos Orc, I think running Arcanite is definitely worthwhile because popping 2, then using like a Glow Bulb to like Synchro for 8 is really, really good. But maybe they just did not quite have the space. Space in this extra deck is pretty tight because pretty much everything does come up in this deck, which is really fun, I guess. But yeah, so congrats to Blaze Phoenix for making 5th, 6th. We'll move on to top 4, and in 4th place we got my boy Richard. You know, I'm not going to try to pronounce his username because I never do, but he was playing Nordics, and this was actually the best performing Nordic list we've ever seen in our tournaments. This made 4th place in literally the largest tournament ever, which is super cool to see. And you know, we actually had very good Nordic players in this tournament as well. So because we had Dave Trepanier, who was the person who originally topped with it in YCS Toronto, playing in this tournament, and you know, Richard outperformed. So shout outs to Richard. That's really cool. I really like this list. I think it's a lot cleaner than lists I've seen in the past. I like the Lance in the main. I think this low-key is like a super smart call right now because of the fact that I think this card cripples heroes, and it's like pretty good against TG, stuff like that, deals with the Horn of the Phantom Beast, and also can help with things like skill drain, stuff like that. But yeah, I really like the Lance in the main. This looks very similar to the list that me and Dave kind of put together. Super similar, but overall I think it's very, very strong. It performs super well. Honestly, I think the only thing that gate kept this list is the next 3 decks above it just like had very favorable matchups into this list, so it's very tricky to actually win this whole tournament given the current meta of what we have. So let's take a look. You know, in 3rd place we had Brahim Poke, who was playing Hero Stun, and honestly this was the best Hero Stun list on the market right now, because a card I really want to talk about that was super relevant in this tournament that we don't actually see anymore is Skill Drain. Skill Drain really fell out of flavor. People were not maining it, but this card came up big for a lot of our players in this tournament. On stream, it always looked Thanos. It took forever to get outed. People just slam MSTs recklessly, and I think a lot of people even are cutting back on MSTs because Skill Drain just fell so far out of flavor. But this was a reminder of why people run heavy MSTs, because Skill Drain just looked so good in this tournament. I definitely saw it gatekeep Richard. I saw it gatekeep a lot of people. This card looked so good, and honestly, I really just like this list. We got the Super Poly in the main for the mirror match, even double Super Poly side for the mirror. It just looks, this list just is very clean for this tournament. I won't say this is like definitively the best way to build Hero Stun. I think it's a very clean list, but I think for this tournament, this was the best way to build heroes, in all honesty. This was such a smart call on their part, in my opinion. So this just looked so phenomenal. So yeah, shout outs to Brahim Poke. Put up hell of a good fight in those matches. You know, a lot of those were on stream, so if you want to check it out, definitely go check it out. They were so impressive to watch. But yeah, this was a very clean deck list. So congrats for getting 3rd place. Moving on, we have Himne, who placed 2nd with his standard GK, like Wonder Wand GK build. I really like this list. I think it's very clean. I like the ability to turbo into the Royal Tribute, because we actually saw Himne Royal Tribute and Agent player for 4. This is where this deck is so good in this format, because especially, like, it was such a good call, right? Because we saw so many Agent players and even Tengu Plant players, and this deck really has such a good matchup into both of those. So looks really good. And I saw Royal Tribute hit 4 cards out of Leigh Murphy's hand, so I'm just saying, this deck can be brutal, right? This deck can be brutal in the right matchup. So super smart meta call, and definitely performed really well. He was clawing to get that 1st place again, and then unfortunately came up with a 2nd, but still played extremely well. Himne, definitely one of our better players in our Discord. Always performs very well. But yeah, overall, pretty standard list. I'd be interested in Leeching the Light. Again, I don't think Leeching is good if your deck doesn't swarm, and this deck doesn't swarm. So I don't know how good that actually is. I also will say, I think 3 Deep Prison is just better than Mirror Force, because like this is what's going to win you like the Heroes or TG match, right? So I think it could just be better, but having the variety doesn't really hurt either. So, you know, it is what it is. We're siding the Gale, which is cool. But I also think in this deck, especially in a deck that's drawing as much as it is with Wonder Wand, I think going the Super Poly route could be smart. And Hime also talked about siding Lance for the matchups. Like, as you can see, like, this is where I was talking about where skill drain's so good. Heavy Storm 3 MST inside. We don't have an out to skill drain in the main deck. So, like, you need Book of Moon, basically, to deal with it. And, like, it's like Descendant, Tribute a Monster, Chain Book of Moon to out skill drain. Which is, again, why I think skill drain is really good right now. And that's also why we got to move on to the winner. We had Shiinu Sla, or Shin. He said I could call him Shin. That's what I'm going to do. Playing TG Stun, very reminiscent of Tyler Nolan's list. In fact, that's what Shiinu said was the basis of the list. You know, just, you know, idolizing Tyler Nolan, wanted to, you know, pay tribute. Played this deck, was drinking wine the whole tournament, just relaxing, flipping skill drain, and, you know, winning the whole thing. Won all the way through winners. Went undefeated the entire tournament, so a very well-deserved win. Also, the first TG deck to ever win in our Discord. We've had them top, but we haven't had it win, which is really crazy. And then, you know, we got to talk about this side deck. You know, the Breaker. This card was hyper relevant in this tournament. So relevant in this tournament. I saw this card win games twice, which is crazy because he has it as an exact one of, but I would say considering bumping this up because of just how relevant this card was in the tournament, Breaker looked so good. I saw him Striker into Warwolf into normal Breaker, pop a back row, synchro for Trishula. Went really hard. Like, it's actually a phenomenal normal summon to pop a back row because, like, if they torrential and this is the only thing it hits, then it's all 1-for-1 because, like, the other two cards are going to float, right? So I actually think this is a pretty smart addition. I like it a lot. But again, we're just like skill drain came up in this list, even opting for Barbaros. It looks so clean. Looks so good, guys. The only thing I would think about is he mentioned that Mayonnaise doesn't seem very good. I think adding more copies of Lance is pretty important for this list. And then also, I'm not a fan of Leeching the Light in this list at all either. I think Lance, and I also am a big fan of King Tiger Wangu in this type of deck where you're running Horn of the Phantom Beast, stuff like that. I think that could be an optimal side. But overall, phenomenal performance by Shinu, or Shin. I'm terrible at pronouncing y'all's names, guys. I'm so sorry. But yeah, super sick win in our largest Tengu Plant tournament we've ever had. So that's really, really crazy. Love to see the diverse top cut we had, but like I said, what can we take away from this tournament? What can we look at? What can we learn? I will say again, we saw top 4, all of them except for Nordics were heavy back row decks, right? Which in my opinion means, again, X-Sabers, man, I think they're just flying so hard under the radar. I think that deck is just extremely overlooked, but I think it's very strong. So something to think about moving forward into other tournaments. Like, I really think X-Sabers are a smart call. Like, they are bumping up. We got to respect the agents, but I mean, you know, it's not a completely unwinnable matchups. X-Sabers can win against agents. It's not a big deal. But I'm starting to get be a big fan of the Decree main X-Sabers again. I think it hits so much stuff right now. Like, all of these decks just get destroyed except agents. So definitely something to consider, guys. As you're looking into moving on to other tournaments. And like I said, like, we saw a huge chunk of our players playing Tengu Plants and Agents, and we only saw 3 of these decks total, but in the top cut, not even making top 4. So that's also something to think about. Like, it might be a smart idea to branch out a bit more. I think one of the greatest advantages of playing something other than these is people are always very prepared for these, and I guess more rogue strategies sometimes can pay off because, like, people don't know how to play against them as well or aren't as familiar. So definitely something to think about. Either way, very cool tournament. Was so happy to be a part of that. I want to give a shout out to the Cali Effect for joining for top 4. That was so cool to have him on. It was a fun cast. Like I said, you guys can check that out on my stream VODs on my YouTube channel. But also, shout out to all the mods and the judge we had. We had Doba. Doba, you know, judged the entire 10-hour tournament for free, guys. He did it for free because all these people just are so passionate about the Tengu Plant format. We want to see it grow. We want to show people just that it is the best retro format that we have in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. And then, you know, we definitely just want to see more people playing it. So we have all these mods putting money from their own pockets into the prize pool with no, you know, expectation of any return. You know, that it's really cool to see. So, you know, shout outs to the people that ran the tournament. Shout out to Photo Shooty. Shout out to Necro. You know, shout out to all those guys, because it wouldn't be possible without them. And this is just such a sick community to be a part of. So yeah, like I said, if you guys want to come participate, I would highly encourage it. Join the link in the description. Come join, come play. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about these decks and what you think about this tournament. And you know, what you think is gonna, you know, kind of start popping off later on. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and make sure you guys have a great time dueling today.